Good morning, you guys. Today is June 11th already. Can you believe the year is flying by? Well, I have to tell you, the beginning of this year, I have never been so surprised by a new flower in the garden as I have been with magical sweet pea. The fragrance of it is captivating through the yard. I have several varieties growing, all from botanical interest. Now I'm going to talk to you in depth about these selections and what you can expect when you sow them from seed. I'm going to explain to you how I sowed them and the results that I got. So today we're going to take a tour of all of our blooming sweet pea varieties so you know what to expect if you purchase these seeds and get ready for next year. The variety that you see growing behind me is Bouquet blend. And the colors on the packet really don't do the flower justice. The saturation of the variety of colors here is so striking. When you come out into the garden, it just lures you over to it. There's so many varieties. I'm going to give you a closer look, but I wanted to show you the packet in case you're interested in finding it online, or perhaps you have a store close to you that may offer botanical interest seeds like we do at Sprouts Farmers Market in Marlton, New Jersey. I may have ordered these seeds during one of the sales. I'm going to talk to you more about the opportunity to get these, but first I wanted to show you the varieties. Now, the Bouquet blend does offer a very high fragrance. It's like a low-key rose hint to it. There are other just notes of maybe like a bergamot. It is kind of sweet, but it's not overwhelming. It's very soapy and fresh. So when the wind hits it and it travels through the garden, you walk around saying, oh my goodness, what is that fragrance? It is very perfumey, it's very beautiful, but it's very soft and delicate. It does not overwhelm, and it has not caused us any allergies. I have not clipped these flowers yet to bring them in the house. I am a big advocate of sowing these seeds and letting flowers grow and just leaving them out here for the birds. And for us when we come out in the mornings and the evenings for our own personal garden tours so that we can enjoy them. It's strange enough, I'm growing all these varieties and I haven't brought any in for bouquets, so I like to say I come to the bouquet. I do not bring the bouquet inside to myself, but it gives us an opportunity to be drawn out into the garden and experience the color and the fragrance. So let's turn you around and get a closer look at Bouquet blend sweet pea. The colors range from a beautiful lilac to a coral. You have a deeper rose, and then there's one in the back here that I don't even know what color to call it. I just call them beautiful. But the combination of the lavenders, lilacs, corals are so incredible. They just mix so nicely together, and from now and then you'll even see a hint of blue in them. When the sun is rising and the sun is setting, it does affect the color and saturation, and they just are so vibrant, it's like there's a spotlight on them. We do have them on an obelisk that we purchased from Amazon. It was very affordable. It came in a combination pack. We can attach the link to the video where we actually highlighted these. That video won't be about sweet peas, but the link for the obelisk will be on here. I highly recommend, if you're going to plant sweet peas, that you do it on an obelisk or a trellis or an arbor, something where you can stake it up, because you can see it does have tendrils. It wants to grab on and just climb. So this is something you can expect. I'm also going to talk to you about seed pods at the end. You might be able to see there's plenty on here, and the difference between a sweet pea seed pod and a snap pea or a sugar pea seed pod, which I have blooming simultaneously. So let's move on to the next gorgeous flower. The next variety behind me, as you can see, is also growing on an obelisk, is the high scent. This is truly a high scent sweet pea, you guys. It has the fragrance almost of a traditional honeysuckle, if you can imagine summertime and approaching a wild honeysuckle vine. and you really can't tell where it's coming from. And when you approach it, it just has this certain sweetness that, I don't know, it almost evokes some fantasy almost of just being in a place where the air is so sweet, and it feels like summer. It feels like a peaceful time in your life. It feels, I don't know, I have to find the words to tell you just how it feels, but all of these flowers, between color and fragrance, they evoke so many feelings and sensations, for me anyway. And I wish that everyone would take a moment to slow down in their day, whether it's at dawn or at dusk, a time where you're with your partner, or maybe you just want to have alone time. You can experience a flower like a sweet pea that will evoke just these feelings in you. Sometimes it's memories of being young, sometimes it's being a child, sometimes it's being the most beautiful day of your life that you can ever remember feeling. It's many things. For me, it's peace, beauty, and the magic and wonder of just what the earth can bring you. That comes from a tiny seed in a packet. Now, I don't know if this package here actually had a price on it. It probably didn't. I'll have to look closer to see. But you can see that, oh, it does, right in front of me. If it would have been any bigger, it would have knocked my eyes out. $3.49. I assure you that you cannot buy a flower in a store for $3.49 anymore. Everything is so expensive. But it says that it's 3 grams, and I planted several seeds out of this packet already, and it's full. Now I'm going to secure my packet here and show you what these seeds look like, so you know. Now, these require a little bit of preparation before you sow them, and really I followed the packet of information. Now, this packet tells you that it's an annual with full sun to part shade. We have all of our sweet peas planted in full blast sun, and I do think that next year I'm going to try them in a part shade area as well, because I want to spread the fragrance. Now I'm going on a long time here in front of this one, but I do have more varieties to show you. So as I looked at the vine, and it did say that it's the most intensely fragrant sweet pea we could find. Perfume your garden and floral bouquets with intoxicating aroma of these lovely ruffled blossoms. This is the most accurate description I think I've ever seen on a packet of seeds. It does vine to 6 to 8 feet, as it explains, and it tells you when to sow it outside and when to start inside. I direct sowed these. Now, this packet tells you tons of information. Botanical Interest is really good at providing information for you, so you can identify it as it's emerging from a seedling. You'll know when to sow it, indoors or outdoors, and when it says when to start outside, it's recommended. You want to follow that on sweet peas. Now, it says in cold climates, 4 to 6 weeks before your average last frost date, or late fall to early winter for spring bloom. Ideal soil temperature is 55 to 65 degrees. That was the instruction that I took. I bought them last year in a sale from Botanical Interest, and I direct sowed them into the garden. It was before it got too cold. We set up our new obelisk, and I followed the instructions to soak the seed in water for 12 to 24 hours and nick the seed coating before sowing. Darkness aids in germination. Sow at recommended depth. Now, it's really, hard to plant something outside and keep it in darkness. So that's where I want you to consider depth of planting a seed. If something really needs light to germinate when you're direct sowing it, and it'll say surface sow it, which means you just barely want to get it settled into the soil so it doesn't blow away. Something like this wants to be planted at 1 inch. So something 1 inch down into soil covered with mulch will be considered darkness. So again, I nicked them, soaked them, brought them out, and then I just went down 1 inch, put them into the soil, and prayed basically. They did emerge rather quickly. This says 10 to 21 days on this variety, and I remember them coming up within a few short days or weeks. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have sweet pea shoots and it's about to be winter. Well, they held up through snow and ice and all sorts of stuff, and I thought, well, this is a really hardy plant. I'm sorry, a little distracted by Mr. Buddy back there doing spinnies in his aviary. So, you know, it held up. And then in the springtime, what had emerged was still there. I kind of worried that it may have been frostbitten or affected from the ice, but it just came right back, and it had the ability to cold stratify on its own, and it had the ability to harden off on its own, and it came up a very hardy plant. Now what you see behind me is a portion of what we've been seeing through the season. It was covered in blossoms, which I'm going to show you a better look at. Now High Scent and Bouquet Blend right now are my two favorites, and I wanted to show these to you first so that you can remember to make a note to get these, and these are the most prolific blooms that I have available to show you right now. Now this flower behind me is really the same color for every single bloom, unlike the Bouquet Blend, which offers you variety of color and just that pop and allure of a flower that will just attract you and many pollinators to the garden. They have been getting a lot of visits from bees and hummingbirds. So let's take you around and get a closer look at the High Scent variety of sweet pea from botanical interest. Now I would describe this flower as a lilac trimmed, like a buttery cream and antique white with hints of greenish yellow at times while it's maturing. And again, the fragrance has just this honeysuckle sweetness to it that is so incredible. Oh my God, I love this flower so much. I will be so sad when it's gone. I did not know what to expect, but to say, you know, that I've been surprised and delighted is an understatement. This has to be, if I had to choose for the fragrance value between this and the Bouquet Blend, I love this fragrance more. But as far as color, I would have to say the Bouquet Blend offers the biggest pop. So really, if you have space to grow them both, you may as well consider it, because the combination of the two fragrances together is so captivating and peaceful. You really won't want to leave your garden when sweet peas are in bloom. Now every sweet pea variety that I'm showing you today was sowed and soaked and all of those preparations on the same exact day. But they performed entirely different. Now I will disclose that I do suspect that my corner galvanized beds here may have had some sort of compromised soil or compromised mulch. I'm having some issues out here, and that may be why my flowers did not grow as prolifically. So I'm going to sow these again this year in a different spot to see if I have a better performance. So right now I'm saying these two sweet peas did not perform as well as the two that I just showed you, but it could be because of the soil, so you'll have to stay tuned to see what happens next year. But you may want to go ahead and purchase these varieties, and I'll show you a close-up of the next selections. Next, we'll be looking at Perfume Delight. Now, this is a smaller vine at 5 to 6 feet tall, and it was sowed at the same time. You can see it's barely got any height behind me on the same obelisk and all of the same growing conditions. This was supposed to offer more variety in color, which I love this yellow-orange color that was supposed to come up, and it did not. They're saying it's an intense fragrance in these large flowering sweet peas with ruffled edges and to calm your senses that remind you of simpler times. It's funny that I was just saying, and I hadn't even read this yet before I started talking about the reminiscing that the sweet pea flower fragrance brings to you. It's an amazing thing. I can't even describe it. It's something that you're going to have to try for yourself. But here is what we should expect, and I'm going to show you what actually grew. But I'm highly suspicious that it's stunted because of something with the soil. So far, Perfume Delight is mainly offering this beautiful, bright fuchsia pink color flower and a beautiful buttery ivory color. Their flowers are shaped a little bit different. They almost take on an orchid appearance, and they have a fragrance that has a slight lemony or citrus smell to them. Really, really pretty. They're just not growing to the height that I expected so far, but strange enough, even though, like I said, they're growing in the same exposure, these guys took longer to actually show up. They stayed emerged for the longest time, and then they kind of went down back into the soil, and I thought that they were going to die. And then they came back up once the temperatures started to get warmer, and now they're producing flowers. So if this is going to be a delayed bloom in comparison to the first two varieties that I showed you, I'm okay with that because it means that I'm going to have sweet peas even longer in the garden. Now the next and probably the most disappointing is the Mammoth. Now I'm really hoping that next year if I sow these in a different location that I'm going to get something really incredible because it looks incredible. All these deep colors that are so saturated in the darker purples and even a blue shade that they are suggesting here. I really wanted to see this. They're saying it's high fragrance, but I got almost none in this bloom. But again, we'll have to wait and see if it's a soil contamination thing, which is a real thing, you guys. So for some of you, if you're trying to grow flowers or vegetables and you're just having a really hard time, you know, oftentimes it could be because of your sun exposure. Maybe you have too much sun or not enough sun. Maybe it's too cool in your climate to grow a certain flower or vegetable. But oftentimes it can happen from contaminated soil. Now, I don't know if sweet pea would be a nitrogen fixer or how it handles bad soil like peas and beans do, considering that they're kind of in the same family in the way they grow. But I'm hoping that I'm going to take a second try with these this year in the fall, and hopefully I'll get a better bloom. But right now I'll show you the few flowers that I did get, and it's still pretty. It's just not what I thought it was going to be. Yep, so that's it. A couple of little tiny flowers from Mammoth. But it's okay. We're going to keep our fingers crossed. It's still a beautiful, almost white flower. There's no real fragrance to it, which I'm really surprised about, but it's still really pretty. And probably grown in the right conditions, it will be quite striking. So fingers crossed for next year. So the next sweet pea variety I'm going to show you, you can see is back here, growing nice and tall. Again, I direct sowed this into a different area without an actual immediate trellis option. I have it growing with clematis. And this one showed up fairly early as well. I was unable to see its habits because I buried the seed in an area that I don't normally frequent or pay attention to against the fence. So in the spring when it emerged as flowers, I was surprised when Farmer John called me over and said, well, you have to see this flower. Did you plant this here? And then I realized right away, I knew what it was. It was the Beaujolais sweet pea. I think that's how you say it. Would you say Beaujolais? It looks like Beaujolais to me. But again, it's saying full sun to part shade, a luxurious sweet pea, this highly perfumed Spencer type beauty, brings dramatic color and large ruffled flowers. The flowers are very beautiful. I'm going to give you a closer look. They're very deep and saturated in a dark burgundy or even a Merlot color. And they seem to grow very tall. Next year, well, this year I'm going to sow the seed for next year's flowers. And I'm going to do it in a place where I can see them more readily and watch their habits and experience this bang of color. I thought maybe they would grow on a piece of hog panel that I have behind me to support clematis, but they seem to just want to grow up instead of wide. So let's take a closer look at Beaujolais. Hopefully you can see that there, and see if you're interested in this color flower, and I'll tell you more about it. Now this flower is really very dark in color, so I think you're going to have a hard time really trying to get you into focus here. Really, there we go. Wow, isn't that beautiful? My goodness. Now you're a little unstable because I have my arms up over my head trying to get a good exposure for you on this flower. They are large and roughly. They are really very striking. They have a lot of details to them, and for appearance, I would say, yes, they are very beautiful. I recommend them because they grew, you know, very easily back here, and they're growing tall, which I really love. As far as fragrance, it has the hints of rose and maybe a very pale honeysuckle flavor, very, you know, distant. It's just not as high perfume as the rest of them. And even standing here, I don't smell anything that like is obvious sweet pea fragrance from them. However, they are just really, really beautiful. And I noticed that the birds are visiting this area more frequently. So hopefully, maybe we have some other footage. Maybe Farmer John is always walking around taking images. If we have any really great images of them, I'll be sure to add it here. But hopefully you can see the color of the Beaujolais. Now, I would imagine it's too late for anyone to really consider growing sweet peas to bloom this year, but I think they need a cold stratification and they need to go through a certain process, but you never know what your growing conditions may be in the part of the world that you live in. But that's one of the benefits about speaking to people all over the world. Everyone has a different opportunity to grow different varieties of things at different times, and we all have a different experience. So it's wonderful to get to share our experience with people all over the world so we can be encouraged to grow varieties that maybe we didn't consider, and we can have an experience that evokes good feelings and memories and just thoughts of pleasure and joy. That really does come with a flower that offers fragrance, that just travels through your garden with you when you come out, and it's a fragrance that draws you out into the garden, which is what we all need, a little bit of escape. And I think that's why most people really want to experience a garden in their life, is because it draws you away from the everyday, and you have an opportunity to have your own garden tour every single day, and it's really, really beautiful. So I want you to consider these varieties that I showed you. There's probably more out there that I have not explored myself, and most likely, for all of you who know my love for buying seeds, I will probably, after experiencing this flower behind me, I will probably be exploring more varieties. Now, right now, when you see this, Botanical Interest just had a sale. Now, you may have missed it. They sold out of their varieties rapidly. They do come back in stock, and they do offer more more sales later on. Now, I want you to consider that, you know, they may be out of stock now, and you'll say, okay, well, the stock's gone. They may not have it until next year. These flowers are covered with seed pods. So anyone who is a grower to provide these types of things are, you know, producing seed pods for you, and they're preparing to pack more seeds. So be patient. If you're shopping on a place like Botanical Interest, because these are the actual varieties that I showed you, and the item that you want is out of stock, add it to your wish list, and you'll get a notification when it comes back in stock. Or perhaps you can look around at other vendors to see what they're offering. I always love, you know, ordering from Baker Creek as well. And I saw a lot of sweet pea variety options in Lowe's this year available from Ferry and Morse. Again, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it because I knew I already had my sweet peas growing. And this was my first year, and I wanted to develop an opinion before I actually spoke to you about it. I did also say that I was going to talk to you about getting seeds and seed pods on your actual flowers, so that you can understand when you buy a flower like this, and if you harvest the seed pods at the right time, you'll never have to buy these again. You'll never have to worry about them going out of stock, because you'll have your own seed variety for next year. So let's take a closer look at the seed pods so you know what to expect, and we'll compare it to an edible pea pod so you know the difference. Now you can see this has gone to seed, and it throws off pods. This is a highly toxic plant and should not be consumed by human or creature at any point. The birds are visiting it, but then they're getting deterred because, do you see all the fuzziness on there? Most creatures don't want to deal with a seed pod or any kind of a flower that has a fuzzy film on it, or any kind of high fragrance. They tend to stay away from it. So they are landing, but they are opting out of ripping this apart. You can see it looks just like a snow pea. Well, we want to let this grow to a point where it turns crispy and brown like a paper bag before you try to sow it, because if you go in after, I'm looking for more for you, if you go in after a sweet pea pod before it's dried out, you may have captured the seed inside of it, but it won't germinate. It has to go through this drying process in order to be viable to germinate. Now here's a closer look from another variety, so we have better exposure here. I did realize that they do have some aphids on them and aphid larvae, so I wouldn't worry about it as it dries up. You can see when you get something that looks like little fuzzy white lint on some of your stuff, it's the eggs of aphids. And I'm not really worried about that. When the pod dries out and it's ready to be harvested for seed, the aphids will be gone at that point. Now behind me you'll see that I have an edible pea garden here. First I have to show you something else that's behind me and it's staring me down. It's Aki! Ak! Is it a bird? Is that a bird? He's probably about to start screaming, you guys, so if he should scream, hold your ears. But it's life with parrots. So behind me here is my sweet pea garden that is snap peas, sugar peas, and or sugar snap peas, snow peas, and shelling peas. I have green arrow, Waldo, Chardin, and then there's a few other varieties that I got, all from Baker Creek over the past few years. Now, this was the biggest harvest we've ever had of edible peas. But the reason I'm showing you this is because you can see the confusion. The vine, it grows very similar to the sweet pea. They're, you know, it's the same. But the pea pods that I'm about to show you are not fuzzy. And the peas inside are, you know, of course, safe to eat. And all of the little birds come here and they will decimate these if I don't harvest the seed pods before they get to them. So let's take a closer look in comparison to the seed pods of edible peas. Now here's one of the snow pea pods. Trying to get some good focus here for you. The camera does not seem to want to focus. It's nice and smooth, though it doesn't have all those fuzzies as the ones I just showed you over on the floral sweet peas. Let's see if I can find better light here. Now these do get little tiny yellow flowers on them, and another variety actually gets a purple flower. They're a much, much smaller flower, and they do have just a mild fragrance to them, but it's nothing in comparison to the sweet pea flowers. So I was concerned as I was growing all of these through the yard that maybe a bird would come along and start dispersing. Oh, this is a shelling pea. It's going to start to puff up and get nice and big. But this video is not about eating these types of peas. It's just showing you the difference in the pods. But I was worried that a bird might, you know, yank one of the sweet peas and mix it in with my edible peas and that I would consume a toxic seed, but I'm not worried about it anymore because the difference between the two is obvious. And, you know, oh, look at this. You can see the peas. I better get these before the little birds do. You can see the difference. Nice and smooth for edible, fuzzy and very, very furry on the flower version. And here's an example of the flower that grows on the edible peas. Isn't it still beautiful though? I love the colors on this. And let's see if we can get you in focus here. Really gorgeous. And I'm just standing here looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh. It's no wonder the little birds are so attracted. They're like little beacons of color calling out to them. And it's amazing that they know the difference between this pea, the edible pea, and the inedible pea. Look at the details on that. So there you go. Even with edible peas, you get a little bit of show of nature in flowers. Really gorgeous. All right. Now this is still the edible peas, and I'm trying to get in focus here for you. Do you see this spent pod? This is the edible pea, but it's going to be the same for the sweet pea. Now, I will harvest these seeds and mark the variety because I have little tags here that say what varieties I have, and I will have seeds for next year to grow my edible peas. The sweet peas will age the same way and get very crispy and brown, and the plant will turn this tan yellow. This is when you harvest your sweet pea flower seeds so that you can have them for next year. You let them get nice and dry, and then you're going to go ahead and prick them and soak them like I explained to you in the beginning, so you can have sweet pea flowers the year after, and you don't have to worry about the availability of your seed packets anymore. You'll have them already. Mr. Buddy's saying flower back there. Mr. Buddy, are you talking about flowers? Yeah. So the boys back here really love coming out. This is Aki, Alex, and Mr. Buddy in the background. They love coming out here when everything is in bloom and we get so many visitors of little birds and bees and butterflies. So the pleasure of the garden is not just for us, it's for our boys here. They love it, and I think you will too. So I want to encourage you to bring some pleasure into your life through the garden and order some sweet pea flowers, maybe everything that I showed you, or even the most fragrant ones. So anyway, you guys, if you have any questions, please post them below. We get back to everybody. I just wanted to share the excitement and joy of growing flowers with you. It's such a wonderful thing. Anyway, you guys, I hope to hear from you, and we'll see you in the next video.